Breaking tonight, Homeland Security issues a new bulletin to law enforcement warning that last night's airstrikes in Syria could ramp up the threat of lone wolf terror attacks by extremists right here in the United States. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. The Associated Press breaking this story in just the last couple of hours, getting a copy of a 5-page joint intelligence bulletin talking about the potential for a retaliatory strike inside of the United States. That comes as we learn ISIS was not the only group targeted and attacked last night. There were also strikes on something called the Khorasan Group. One of its leaders is one of the few men who knew about 9/11 before it happened. He was on the inside. And the U.S. government currently has a $7 million bounty on his head. Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, reports on the late-breaking news from Washington. Catherine?
And Megyn, a Homeland Security contact is telling us tonight that the bulletin warns of retaliation for those airstrikes, but there's no evidence of a credible plot inside the U.S. That said, lone wolf or small-cell operations like the Boston Marathon bombings are hard to pick up, so the bulletin advises law enforcement to be vigilant in the days ahead. The bulletin also says the strikes diminish the likelihood of a successful plot to bring down a jet using explosives, but does not eliminate it. Fox News has also learned that a half-dozen operatives, all associated with Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda senior leadership, relocated to Syria with the intent to develop new plots targeting aircraft bound for Europe and the United States. They are known simply as the Khorasan Group. Among them is Sanafi al-Nasser, a top al-Qaeda strategist and finance chief, who is Osama bin Laden's third cousin, and Muhsin al-Fadli, who ran al-Qaeda's network in Iran before moving to Syria in the spring of 2013. The State Department is offering up to $7 million for information that leads to his killer capture.
Fadli's in charge of planning external operations, that is, mass casualty attacks in the West. He was specifically sent to Syria to execute these operations.
U.S. intelligence official also confirms tonight the Khorasan Group had gone operational, with members testing explosive components that they hope to carry onto jets. The decision to go ahead with strikes was made, I'm told, within the last week, and based in part on updated location information about the group's senior leadership. Megyn.
Catherine Herridge, thank you. So what are we to make of this threat and the administration's decision to launch this attack? Andrew McCarthy is a former federal prosecutor who was the lead prosecutor of the terrorist known as the Blind Sheikh. He is now a National Review contributing editor. Andy, and so al-Qaeda, first of all, is apparently alive and well and very focused on attacking us, so much so that we just bombed one of its factions in Syria alongside ISIS as we bombed them, which is not exactly what we've been led to believe by the administration, but put it in perspective for us.
Well, the Khorasan Group is something that seems obscure because it's not a name we've heard before. But this Fadli guy is a very heavy-duty character.
The guy they told about 9/11 before it happened.
Yes, and the guy who also ran al-Qaeda's operation in Iran, was sent to Syria both to conduct attacks against the United States and to try to broker some kind of settlement between the al-Qaeda outfit there and ISIS. Somebody who was very much trusted by Zawahiri, and he's a bad news character.
And he wasn't able to broker that deal, apparently, because they say ISIS and al-Qaeda, this particular group, Khorasan Group, are very much at war. And the stakes are who can bomb Western targets, in particular the United States of America, the worst and the soonest.
Yeah, and that's something for us to bear in mind as we assess the threat. The competition between the two is, who can attack the United States the fastest and the worst. And the reason that's a competition between them is because their sense, accurately, is that that'll get them a lot of support among young Muslims who they're trying to recruit.
There was a briefing by senior Obama administration officials today on this group, Khorasan, right, this al-Qaeda faction that we also bombed next to ISIS in Syria last night. And they talked about how these are al-Qaeda operatives taking advantage of the conflict in Syria that has left a void and provided a safe haven for them to advance attacks against Western interests. There's no question that what we did or didn't do in Syria is playing a role here on the need to go bomb Syria, whether it's ISIS or Khorasan, in the first place.
Well, one thing is for certain. We know from experience we can't allow al-Qaeda or any of its spin-offs and affiliates like ISIS to have safe haven any place. When they have safe haven, they attack the United States. To my mind, both al-Qaeda and ISIS are in a stronger position than al-Qaeda was in on September 10th, 2001.
Why?
Well, because they have more territory, they have more resources, they have better training, they're more familiar with our military tactics, which they hadn't really dealt with prior to 9/11, and they continue to have streams of overseas funding. So on every metric, when you add in the lack of immigration enforcement in the United States, in every important metric for anticipating an attack, they're in better shape today than they were 14 years ago.
This report now is that this Khorasan group it involved a bomb made of a non-metallic detonator, toothpaste, and clothes dipped in explosive material. They have a connection to the ultimate of bomb makers, apparently,
right,
who's got a bunch of little disciples running around out there who also want to bomb us. How concerned should we be about this when you hear yet again the guy who came very close to bringing down two Western airliners, with the underwear bomber and the other time, is still trying to make bombs that are not detectable by American aircraft and the security system around them. And now he's got some group that's filled the vacuum in Syria that's devoting all of its efforts to this plot.
Yeah, Megan, we have to be extraordinarily concerned because the place where they're operating now in Syria, Iraq, this sort of no man's land, but especially Syria, is a place where we have appallingly little intelligence. And on the domestic side, what has gone on is we've been moving away from this preventive, intelligence-based counterintelligence, where instead what Obama wants to do is partner with our partners in the Islamic community to be our eyes and ears out there, rather than have the police go around.
Well, wouldn't they argue that it worked here? Because they say, hey, we went and bombed them, it was becoming operational, and guess what? They're no longer.
Well, except that we don't have a good read now on who's in the country. I mean, they had to come out today and say there could be lone wolf attacks, there could be small cells that we don't know about. A lot of times we don't know about those things until after they've attacked. So I think if you look at the total picture, we're in much worse shape than we were before.
What did you make of the announcement? I think many people were caught by surprise today to hear, wait a minute, wait, what? We bombed someone other than ISIS? Wasn't ISIS what the president gave the primetime news conference about 2 weeks ago?
Well, I think there's two aspects to it. There's obviously a strategic aspect of it. If they had real intelligence that there was an imminent attack against the United States, President Obama was duty-bound to attack. I don't think he would have had an alternative. It's also helpful to him politically, because while there's some question about the legal authority for attacking ISIS, there's no real question about attacking Al-Qaeda affiliates. That's clear. If it's an imminent attack, it's clear under the Constitution. If it's an Al-Qaeda attack, it's clear under the existing authorization for military force. So emphasizing that may be an easier way for him to go in terms of covering himself politically and legally with what we're doing in Syria right now.
It's a twofer.
Yeah.
Andy McCarthy, great to see you.
Thanks, Megan.
Also breaking right before this broadcast, we are getting new video of the targeting and new assessments of what is happening on the ground. A live report from the Pentagon and Colonel Oliver North.